welcome to our board meeting this evening. Before our regular board meeting, we have a bond issuance notification act hearing. And so, Valerie, will you please call the roll?
Sir, Mr. Breaker.
Here.
Dr. Cross.
Present.
Dr. Kroll.
Present.
Mrs. Lehman. Here. Mr. Neely.
Here.
Mr. Roth.
Present.
And Mr. Red.
Here.
Hey, this evening we're having a hearing to hear from the public on the proposed bonds to be issued. The reason for the bonds to be issued is to have facility upgrades. The first thing on the agenda is the Morton High School entrance and locker room improvements, and then we plan to move into some early childhood improvements and some sports service improvements. So that is the reason for the issuance of the bonds. So now we can open up does anyone on the board have any discussion items for that? With that, Jerry, does anybody have any written testimony? We received any?
There is no written testimony.
Okay. Now we will open the floor for public comment. If there's anybody in the public that would care to address the bond issuance. With that, we will declare that the Bond Issuance Notification Act hearing is closed. Valerie, please call the roll. I need a motion
Yes.
to close the hearing.
So moved. Support.
All right, here we go. Mr. Roth.
Yes.
Mr. Neely.
Yes.
Mrs. Lehman.
Yes.
Dr. Kroll.
Yes.
Dr. Cross.
Yes.
Mr. Breaker.
Yeah. Yes.
And Mr. Red.
Yes.
And just a few things about what just happened. So we just had a hearing. We get to hear from the public if there's any comments about before we issue bonds. At our next meeting on December 12th, we'll have a parameters resolution. And basically, the board is voting to agree to go issue bonds. And then there's the process of accepting bonds in January, February timeline. And then we'll get those funds for those needed projects. So that's the process. Tonight was us listening to our community, if they had anything to say about it. And the next steps will be approving the process to actually issue those bonds.
Okay. Thank you. With that, we'll call our regular board to order.
Mr. Breaker.
Here.
Dr. Cross.
Present.
Dr. Kroll.
Present.
Mrs. Lehman. Here. Mr. Neely.
Here.
Mr. Roth.
Present.
And Mr. Red.
Here.
With that, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For our audience presentation, we're going to have just a brief comment from the board. During the public comment segment of our recent board meetings, there have been a number of threats of lawsuits and claims of complaints being made to governmental oversight agencies such as the Illinois State Board of Education, the Federal Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights. Therefore, the board will no longer comment on these matters. With that, this is the only time set aside for audience presentation. The Board of Education will take all presentations under consideration and respond at the latest by the end of the regular next Board of Education meeting. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Participants are expected to conduct themselves with civility and respect and follow the guidelines outlined in the board policy. We want to emphasize the importance of maintaining a professional decorum during the public comment segment. Yelling, verbal abuse, and cheering, clapping will no longer be tolerated, and those who cannot conduct themselves with respect will be asked to stop speaking. So with that, we will open up to public. Joe, who do we have first?
We have a couple students, Caden Brubaker and Emma Belsley.
Hello, so my name is Emma Belsley, like he said, and I'm a junior here at Morton High School. I'm the vice president of our local Skills USA chapter, and I recently got elected to be the Southern Vice President of the Illinois Skills USA chapter. chapter overall.
I'm Caden Brubaker. I'm a senior at Morton High School. I'm the secretary for the chapter of the high school, and then I'm also a state officer along with Emma, and I am the parliamentarian.
Yeah, we are just here to say how much we appreciate the funding that the board has given Skills USA and the opportunities it's been able to open up. We understand that it's kind of a newer thing in our school especially, and it's just been such a great opportunity, and we just continue to ask that the board keeps funding Skills USA, because for me personally, there's been so many amazing opportunities, and I know talking with other students in our chapter and from other schools, it's just such a interesting and beneficial experience. One example of this is we recently had the chance to go to a LEAD conference where we were able to learn how to better serve our individual chapter, and that was also where we had the opportunity to run to be elected for a state officership, which was also really beneficial, just learning those skills and those personal and workplace skills together with students from other schools.
Like, seriously, thank you so much for the funding. As we're both aware, it's very not cheap to be part of Skills USA. A lot of the events cost quite a bit of money, and there's registration fees and everything. So it helps a lot to relieve some of that stress off the students' shoulders and off like Morton's budget shoulders. An event that I think everyone looks forward to is our state competition that we experienced in late April. It's called the Championship, and it's like over like $100 just registering for it, and then we also have to get hotel rooms. So all the money is really appreciated, and the support that you guys give, because we really try and make sure that everyone that's going into any kind of trade or technical related field really gets all the experience they can. We have kids going for welding, diesel tech, and last year I did robotics, urban search and rescue, which is like you build a robot and it has to navigate a course. And like without funding from the board and all the support that we get, it wouldn't be possible. We have another event coming up this Friday where we have, I think, 14 or 16 students, including us, going to Peoria for Construction Pathways, which has over 20 industry partners in construction-related fields, and all the students there are looking to go into the construction discipline, and they're all going to be able to learn from all the great opportunities there, and they're going to meet industry partners, so they'll have a much better jumping off point in the future for anything they do. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker is Heather McMeekin.
Good evening, I'm Heather McMeekin. I am reading this statement for one of the parents who could not be here this evening. Her name is Julie Peters, and she will be inboxing this to you. Good evening, my name is Julie Peters. For those of you who may not recall, I spoke at the last school board meeting. I positioned myself in this conversation as a concerned mom, stepmom, mental health therapist, and Morton resident. I will be succinct. Please remove Michael Saunders from his position as principal at Grundy Elementary School. I listened to the statement from Amy McLeod-Parr at the last school board meeting, and I have lost confidence that Mr. Sanders has the capacity to lead the students. Mr. Saunders segregated a black disabled child from his peers and prevented him from seeking the support he would have needed to be successful in the classroom. Furthermore, he ignored trauma-informed best practices to support the students' social emotional needs and mental health concerns. Earlier this year, a complaint was made that Mr. Saunders assaulted an LGBTQIA student. The father of this student requested that a community advocate help, and that community advocate, me, filed a FOIA request due to evidence of bias that the principal may have a deeply rooted conflict of interest linked to the phobia of all queer folk. I wish to make a very important point that seems to be missed over the past 3 months. The FOIA request could not have yielded any such evidence. Mr. Saunders' bias could have been difficult to reveal, but that is not what happened. The FOIA request yielded thousands of results linked to homophobic and transphobic rhetoric, hate groups, and extremist organizations and racist cults. In most communities, this result would have initiated an immediate investigation, followed by the dismissal of a man grossly misusing his authority and power to project a bigoted agenda. Due to the demographic majority of the 709 school district, this man's behaviors were defended. As this is the season of gratitude, I feel very thankful that I have not succumbed to the idea that morality is defined by the volume of folks who share an opinion, as I am proud to stand in opposition to the majority voice of this community and to align myself with a higher calling of morality. Lately, we have heard folks step up to share the fear-mongering rhetoric rooted in the idea that supporting the rights of minority children will impede the education and rights of their own children. This statement is simply false and anchored in ignorance, granting the marginalized majority a voice, rights, and protections in a society does not threaten the rights of the majority. My efforts to protect students who identify as Black, Indigenous, and other persons of color, and students who are part of the LGBTQ+ community pose no threat to the majority of white, cis, heteronormative, able-bodied students and their families in District 709. But I hypothesize that we will hear more uneducated, backward claims purporting this very idea. I suppose it can be scary for a very homogenous community to imagine changing the timbre of its attitude towards folks who exist outside the bracket of the majority. Perhaps folks fear losing their edge of affluence and influence. I imagine this is why the district is having such a crisis of conscience upholding Title IX, which demands that public schools accommodate student interest, proportional financial assistance, and equal benefits and opportunities for all students, including queer students. Title IX protects any person from sex-based discrimination, regardless of their real or perceived sex, gender identity, and/or gender expression. Female, male, and gender nonconforming students, faculty, staff, and community members are protected from any sex-based discrimination, harassment, or violence. I guess this is why the district is also having such a hard time upholding Title VI, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin or identity in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. Finally, I guess this is why the district is having trouble upholding the Americans with Disabilities Act, which requires people with disabilities to have equal opportunity to benefit and access all of the programs, services, and activities. I have been really befuddled by the District 709 School Board's reluctance to investigate, take seriously, and act in a situation where an administrator has broken the law. Please open this district up to an external investigation, follow guidelines suggested by the Human Rights Campaign to ensure the safety of historically marginalized and oppressed students who identify as Black, Indigenous, or other people of color, and LGBTQI students. Use resources such as the Trevor Project and the American Pediatric Association recommendations for LGBTQIA students.
Thank you,
Please
Trevor.
remove Michael Saunders.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker will be Tammy Woodmansey.
Black children, does it make me woke or a bully if I stand up for their rights too at Grundy? At the direction of Principal Michael Saunders, a Black child in an almost entirely white school for most of the school year was forced to eat separately, use a separate bathroom, come into school at a separate time, and leave school at a separate time. He was segregated from the white students and labeled a problem by Michael Saunders. Michael Saunders told that child's mother that he didn't have time to babysit. This mother has the digital proof to substantiate her claims. This same Black child is legally blind and has an IEP that was ignored. After the child's biological father was murdered, this child was punished for putting his head down, playing with his necklace, and writing on his fingernails. But kids that say the F word ending in T, slave, and the N word have had zero punishment. It's a crime. It's a hate crime. The Black child I'm speaking of has an IEP that allows for quiet time. The Black child was put at the back of the room. He's legally blind. The black child was constantly and consistently sent to study independently, though he had no ability to self-teach. He was isolated, segregated. He was deprived in education and social interaction for putting his head down. When this black child was unable to understand the material, to do the homework, or maintain good grades, he was punished. He was deprived in education, he was deprived PE, no school carnival, no walking to get ice cream at DQ with the class, no field trip, because of his inability to complete the work that the school made it impossible for him to complete. When this child reacted to this abuse, he played right into the hands of his abuser, Michael Saunders, because then he would fit the problem child narrative that Principal Saunders created. This child with an IEP had no support. He was set up to fail by Michael Saunders. When minority and marginalized children react to rights violations and abuse in this district, they are labeled the problem. They are gaslit. Dr. Smuck, because of Michael Saunders, you all have a big problem. You supported the abuser and not the children, but now, you know, you must act. I know you don't support that. A group of us have stood up and stood with these kids. Though we've been called lunatics, this is for you all, woke, bullies, and pot stirrers by friends of Mrs. Johnson. I'm so upset. The supporters of a bigoted teacher that is no longer in the school. They are here tonight, Johnson's supporters. They are here for the continuance of bigotry and crimes against children. It is illegal. These bigots, community members, you hate being called bigots. It is exactly what you are as you rally the good white extremist troops. They may be your neighbors and call themselves Christians, shamefully excusing their intolerance by calling it disagreement. It is hate. Citing their religion, they blame it on Jesus. But make no mistake, these hateful people do not believe in equality, democracy, and the rule of law that is outlined in the Constitution of the United States of America. In this great nation, religious freedom does not allow for one's religion to impede other people's rights. To children, it is a crime. You are not allowed to make choices for all parents because of your beliefs. Allies of marginalized children will continue to make good trouble. As I stand here, as long as I can stand, I will stand against bigotry. Join me. Do what is good. Do what is right. Intolerance of one's existence is hateful. It is not a simple disagreement. You have the right to be a bigot, but it is not your right to rob another of their constitutional rights with your beliefs. This is a public school. Prejudice, even if not deliberate, it is still prejudice and the result is the same. Today, you know more and you can change your mind. You can do what the law says you must do. Demand the resignation of Michael Saunders and Diane Krall. They colluded, they broke the law. Stand with all students. That's why you are here.
Okay, our next speaker will be Daniel Countryman.
Thank you for the time tonight. I just like to say a prayer for our board tonight. Dear God, we just ask that you bring your peace, love, and joy to this room and wisdom. That you would fill this room and fill us with your presence. That you would allow everyone here to show respect, and that all the people in here would feel loved and respected. That the truth of the presentations would stand out. And that you would guide the people in this room to create an environment where the kids can learn and grow to be great citizens and great build great communities. I also, God, please end the bullying that's happening in our schools. We know there's many kids that don't feel safe in our schools. We ask that you would bless them and that you would lift them up and that you would take care of them and that you would guide our board on the best policies to set forth in our schools and our teachers and the other students there to be able to end the bullying. We also pray for the school absenteeism that's been going on. God, we ask that you just lift up our school and bless it and help it be a place where the kids want to learn and to be. We ask that you bless the math, the reading, and the preparation for the careers. We ask that you bless our school and create an environment where truth and respect are there. We just ask for a blessing on the finances and on the bonds that are being set up, that you would give our board, our school, a good interest rate and that the kids could be blessed. God, please just bless this room and the people that are in here, God. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Our next speaker will be Nathan Fay.
First, I'd like to start by thanking the board for the time and effort you all put in to make sure that District 9 stays awesome. It's easy to listen to some of the speeches at these meetings and get the assumption that the district is failing or falling apart, yet the reality is that because of you, the great administrators, and the awesome teachers and staff that make up our district, District 709 is one of the best school districts in the state. This is why me and my family have chosen District 709 as our school district. We have achieved this without adopting the far left curriculum being pushed on us from both the state and federal levels, and now being pushed on us by this activist group. Because we are fairly conservative here and have not adopted their agenda, that makes us the high poppy that has to be cut to size. They are doing this by throwing out spurious accusations like spaghetti and hoping that some will stick. But if you examine any one of their accusations with an impartial eye, they quickly fall apart. This last meeting was specifically egregious when they outright accused Principal Saunders of racism because of a disagreement on disciplinary action. It is very easy to level accusations when, because of the nature of privacy laws, the board and Principal Saunders are unable to defend themselves publicly. Thankfully, the accusation leveled last meeting was so clearly missing key details that anyone can clearly see through it. You have heard, or you will hear tonight, specific examples of how Principal Saunders supports and cares for minority children in his school. Mr. Saunders is truly a great principal, and I know that a student's race or sexuality plays no factors on how he treats them. These activists claim love and acceptance, yet try to destroy the careers of good men and women. They rail against individuals for their personal religious beliefs, and in posts online mock people for how they cope with medical issues. They pretend to care for the individual student, but really only care about getting the leftist curriculum like CSE in District 709. CSE, or Comprehensive Sexuality Education, when you listen to how it is described, sounds mostly innocent. But when you dig deeper, you'll find things like the concept of transgenderism being introduced to children as young as kindergarten. You'll also find sexual exploration is being promoted as a normal lifestyle to adolescent children. These things you'll find are just a couple among a host of other issues. They will pretend that you can sit your child out of a lesson or two and that it'll be fine. But part of the curriculum is that it is supposed to be incorporated into daily discussions. I encourage the board to stand strong against these attacks and stand behind our teachers and administrators with support. I encourage those sitting at home listening to these meetings who agree with the board to show up in person and voice your appreciation and tell your story of why you chose District 709. If you are listening and aren't sure what to believe, I encourage you to listen with a discerning ear and to determine if what they are saying sounds like the truth or just unfounded attacks. Thank you for your time and your dedication.
Our next speaker will be Leslie Shanks.
My name is Leslie Shanks. I graduated from Morton. My oldest graduated from Morton. The younger two were pulled from Morton following 8th and 6th respectively and homeschooled for several reasons, one of which was this push for teaching that has no place in schools. In 6th grade, my daughter's teacher asked the children to research and report on the primary candidates. The teacher filled out the first square on her favorite candidate, Hillary Clinton. My daughter added to that square some negatives with my blessing. However, she was afraid of receiving a poor grade because she had disagreed with the teacher. Public schools have become a place for indoctrination, and I am glad that Morton stands firm on making education their focus. On 2 occasions, I was contacted by the junior high principals, once for my oldest and once for my middle child. I thank the principal for informing me of the matters at hand. I supported any decision he made. Both of the younger children experienced bullying. At the junior high, I contacted the principal. He addressed the boy doing the bullying, and that was sufficient for me. Bullying is not a new thing, nor is it exclusive to Morton, nor is it exclusive to any particular group, nor is it simply expressing a difference of opinion, nor will it ever go away completely, nor is it okay. I think we need to carefully examine the motives of those who are making very serious accusations about our town and our schools. They are not credible. I have had personally experienced slander from several of them. A pediatrician who claims to advocate for children has repeatedly denied cries for help from a domestic violence victim. She silenced the victim with threats of legal action and refused to view evidence. She stated she knew everything. She even stated that since the abuse did not occur in front of her, that it didn't happen. She repeated the lies from the abuser in medical documentation. She clearly has a prejudice against the victim, who holds different beliefs from her. Given the fact that this doctor is a notoriously poor historian, the abuse victim requested to record the latest visit. With this so-called advocate for at-risk kids, the victim was denied the right to record her visit and told that the doctor's staff would have to be a witness. Astonishingly, 2 weeks later, this doctor had the audacity to stand in this building and say there should be recordings of complaints and that a subordinate was not sufficient because of fear of retaliation. This is the epitome of hypocritical. Following this doctor's first speech, I was compelled to end my silence. I simply could not believe that someone who so callously ignored the cries of an abuse victim could stand in this room preaching about the safety of children. I left an honest review. I was met with cyberbullying and slander from 2 of the people accusing Morton of having a bullying problem. Morton has a bullying problem, and it starts with a small group of adults in the room who are bent on forcing their opinions on or silencing anyone they disagree with. They cause harm by teaching that anyone who disagrees with you hates you. Imagine how traumatizing it would be for an adolescent to believe that everyone who disagrees with you hates you. Your value does not come from the opinions of others. People who disagree can and do love you. Love is not unconditional approval, nor is disagreement hate. In spite of claims that it was against the law to have a prayer before the meeting, just this year, the Department of Education stated that it is wholly acceptable to have clergy lead in prayer at school events. Last year, a football coach was vindicated of his wrongful firing for praying in the football field. 2 weeks ago at St. Lucie Airport, the Jehovah's Witnesses had a free speech booth. While I don't agree with them, I simply walked on by. This is what our forefathers intended. I care deeply about hurt kids. I don't believe that persecuting Christians and teaching young children about exploring sex is how we solve the problem. Studies show that teens who are not sexually active are least likely to be depressed or consider suicide. We need to evaluate what is really best for the kids. We need to set an example on how to communicate with one another kindly and make an attempt to understand each other. We need to prioritize facts over feelings. While feelings are important, sometimes they lie to us. We need to treat others equally and remain consistent, regardless of religious affiliation or lack thereof. Finally, there is a whole lot of misinformation about the Constitution and rights. The First Amendment does not give freedom from religion. It prohibits the government from establishing a religion and protects freedom of speech. The term separation of church and state does not exist in the Constitution. Freedom from offense is not a constitutional right. Just because people continue to repeat falsehoods with conviction does not make it so. Perhaps we need to spend a lot more time on the Constitution in school. Thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker will be Gabrielle Berkey. Hi, my name is Gabe Berkey. I attended Morton Schools K through 12 and have 4 children who are either currently in or previously gone through nearly every grade at Grundy. All school-aged children in my home are Black and have extreme trauma backgrounds. One child started attending Grundy when he was in the 6th grade. He had a behavioral IEP, and trust me, he earned every penny of it. That being said, Grundy flooded him and our family with support to help him succeed and communicated frequently to update us on his progress. As behaviors got worse, the school social worker wrote us a message saying that she had asked our child to come up with ways to request a break when he felt like he was starting to lose control. The method our student chose, get this, can I please go to the office for a break? Far from feeling threatened by Mr. Saunders, our Black child found nearness to Mr. Saunders a refuge and safe space to go when things got crazy. After one particularly difficult week of poor choices, he was disappointed that he probably wouldn't be able to attend an end-of-year field trip that everyone else in the class got to go on. The final decision, though, rested with Mr. Saunders. In his message to us, Mr. Saunders outlined the severity of our child's choices and then stated, and I quote, "From my perspective, those 2 incidents alone would make the average student ineligible for the field trip. However, our child is not the average student. He has experienced things in this life that most of us cannot fathom. Sadly, his life experience has altered his worldview, which directly impacts his day-to-day behavior." Going on, Mr. Saunders said that he would provide alternative discipline, but would still allow our child to attend the field trip. This would have been such an easy time for Mr. Saunders to continue this vendetta against Black people that I've heard so much about over the past few months. Instead, Mr. Saunders chose discernment. He chose grace. To this day, that foster child, who is now high school age and has attended countless schools all over the state of Illinois, says that Grundy Elementary School was the best school he has ever attended. The biological father of one of our other children was murdered. Our son was subsequently diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Again, Grundy was awesome in responding to his needs. 504 plan was put in place and lasted a few years. In time, as regular, ongoing services were no longer needed, a meeting was scheduled to discuss termination of the 504 plan. Moments before the meeting, the school social worker, who was our primary point of contact on the matter, told us that she wouldn't be able to attend the meeting. Mr. Saunders said that he would lead the meeting in her place. Mr. Saunders wasn't directly involved in the routine business of the plan, so we were a little nervous he might not understand the finer details of what our son's needs were. But when the meeting started, Mr. Saunders proactively addressed every single one of our concerns, going down the list point by point, showing and demonstrating that he had read up on our child's needs and knew the issues well. As for Diane Krall, I don't know her in an educational setting, though I do know her initially from being a former neighbor. One day, as our family was playing outside, another of our neurodivergent children was having a massive meltdown. As Diane happened to be going on a walk past us, she came in close and in her quintessential calm and quiet demeanor asked if she could help out by taking our little guy on a short walk with her. She ended up giving him an enjoyable piggyback ride around the block, if I remember right. All this is perhaps anecdotal evidence, but it suggests a reality that is a far cry from the absurd analogy I heard last month that gay and Black kids are like Christians fearing for their lives on a daily basis before their Taliban principal. A suggestion that would be laughable were it not so offensive. If issues come up, I encourage you, discuss them. If allegations are made, take them serious, investigate them. But I cannot thank the members of this school board and the staff at Grundy enough for the welcome sense of safety that they have been able to provide my children over the years. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Megan Bond. Megan Bond.
Thank you very much for your time. To continue what Tammy said, the school board and Dr. Smock, if you support Michael Saunders and Diane Kroll, you are not supporting all the children you are legally tasked to support. They colluded and they misused school funds to violate the rights of students. They put all of you in legal peril. They put the district's finances and their personal finances and families on the line. Don't let them drag you along with them. Get some diversity in place, not bigoted leadership, taking those overnight training courses, but place true diversity in leadership and learn from them. Right now, show all the students in this district that Morton schools will stand with them and give them the level playing field that the law requires. Thank you.
All right, our final speaker for the night is Gretchen Hohulen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gretchen Hohulen. My two boys go to school in this district. We own a home in Morton, and my dad's Bruce Hohulen. I don't know if anybody knows him, but I've said things about I'm worried about bullies in this town and people being bullied, and I feel like adults are being bullied, like my criminal record has been brought up to people because of saying about, I don't know, people just like, I feel concerned because people are being bullied, and I'm here to support people, and that's why I come to meetings, just to show my support, and I have concern. And I feel like it should be addressed, and people shouldn't be scared to come forward or something just because others make it harder. So thank you. I appreciate you listening.
All right, that is it.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to administrative reports.
Okay. Well, hopefully everybody had a great Thanksgiving break and a restful time. Now we're back and running for 4 straight weeks, so here we go. I don't have a very long report tonight. I just want to thank the Grundy staff for hosting us tonight, and maybe Mr. Breaker can say a few more words about that, but just a big congratulations to the teachers and staff and administration at Grundy for their exemplary status. They're very proud about that. It's a very high honor for them, and that's just a great thing that happened for them this year. The business office renovation just right across the hall is just about complete, almost ready to move in. I suggest that board members, before you leave tonight, just take a gander over there, walk through it, and see the big change that happened over these last few weeks. I know the business office team are looking forward to moving in and getting settled into their place. They've been kind of scattered about this building in different places, so I know they're looking forward to making that their home again. The Morton High School renovation project, of course, is the design process is pretty much fully completed. We went out. We made notice for bids on November 16th. We will be opening those bids that are due on December 13th, and then approving the low bidder on December 19th at that special meeting of ours. So thank you again for us being able to add a meeting to your calendar. It shouldn't be a very long meeting. That'll be the only action item, I'm pretty sure, on that agenda, but it's a big one. It's who's gonna do that work on a major renovation project that's gonna really change the face of our high school and then lead to other big improvements over there. So that's kind of what's ahead of us as we head into December. And that's all I have to report on tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Smock? Get an A+ for brevity, so. President's report is to, we had the opportunity to be at Grundy School this evening and appreciate Mr. Saunders and his staff taking the evening to spend with us and the hospitality they showed us. And it's always great to spend some time in the schools, and we learned a lot and got to learn what their needs are and help celebrate their success as well. So that was a good thing. For agenda building, I think next month we're gonna add on to our discussion item is our audience presentation policy. So next meeting, come prepared to discuss that. We're gonna discuss some options and just some ways to make it a little more productive. So, anything else for agenda building? Anybody? No? With that, we will move on to our discussion item, which is our discussion of our recent visit to the Illinois Joint Conference, School Board Conference. I think we're all attended, and it was, I think hopefully we all learned a lot. I can start off. Two of the seminars that I visited, one was on collective bargaining, and just it was a good overview on just helping us understand some of the processes that go into that. And my two takeaways that probably hit me the hardest were probably maybe I should have known before I went, which happens a lot. But the reality is that both sides have the same goal, and that's to improve the kids' lives. And so going at it with the fact that we all have the same goal is trying to help the kids probably would help. And then secondly is the reality is when it's done, we still all have to live together. So civility, being, making a civil process is of the utmost importance. The other one I attended was what your superintendent wants you to know but can't tell you.
Can't wait to hear this.
Yeah. Anyway, it's basically, it said, I think Craig paid the speaker, but we're supposed to be nicer to him, I think. It's basically.
How could you be?
The reality is, no, it's one of the couple takeaways is, what, sometimes we get caught up in this and we don't really show our appreciation for the admin staff and for the teachers and the people that put the day-to-day work in. And one of the comments was, take time to show appreciation to those that are involved in the real work of the school district. And the other one I can't read my notes now, so. Is feedback, making sure that we give the superintendent feedback if he's not meeting our expectations or the information that we want to know that we don't feel like we're getting, or if there's a goal that's not met, to let him know he can't read our minds. So those were the two my takeaways. So Dan, if you want to go next.
Sure. I went to the tried and true art of school boarding, which has been, I think he said, in the teens of years of annual presentation, and found it helpful as other board members have in the past. And it was really neat to see that on a national level, our board really operates in a lot of the best practices, and he gave lots of examples of places he'd been and conflicts he had helped resolve. And I was just really challenged by one of his quotes in light of what the last 3 years on the board has been personally. He said that in a healthy culture, disruption spurs innovation. And so as I've been thinking about his presentation, just the disruptions, the things that aren't for weeks on the agenda and moving down from discussion to action, the things we don't expect are actually the things that we can hopefully shine on the most because we have the resources to do that. So what have we not thought of? And instead of seeing those as derailments, instead seeing them as, ways that we think differently and bigger. So that was just a very encouraging session. And then I really just want to thank our community for the investment in sending the board for development to this conference. I went to a trauma-informed policy roundtable and was just really encouraged that the steps our district has taken in social emotional learning and support and the way that Dr. Smock has restructured with our wellness coordinator is on point. A big takeaway for me as a board member was that the resilience from trauma that our students have really depends on the culture and the next things that happen after the trauma. And so we really can make a difference if we have a context and culture for healing. And so just thinking, how can our policies really inform that? And they gave some really nice examples. So those were some highlights for me.
And I'm supposed to follow that.
No pressure.
Go, Jerry. Wow. Thanks, Diane. That was really, really well said. Now I gotta follow. So I went to, actually Valerie and I seemed to go to a lot of the same classes last year and this year. Went to the Google productivity class, which I always love going to those, and I wish I could get in there more often, but they talked about Google Keep, which if you go into Google, you'll see the waffle, go into Google Keep, and there's a lot of interesting stuff that you can do there. If you do have a file, a document or whatever, you can go in and there's a version history. So if you make any corrections to it and you mess up, you can go back a version to get the old version, which I've known that in spreadsheets, Excel, but not in Google Docs. So that was kind of neat. There's smart chips, which I haven't played with yet. Building blocks, haven't played with yet. Basically, he just did a lot of training in Google Docs and a little bit of Gmail. So the moral of the story is what that is, if you don't play with it, you're not going to learn anything. So you need to take a little bit of time to play with it. And all this is about efficiency, which I'll get to ChatGPT later. I also went to Working Together for Kids, again with Valerie, and that was more of an interesting thing for me to see how the superintendent and basically the administration, Valerie, worked together to get the boatloads of information out to us as the board to know what we need to see and without inundating us with information. So that was really interesting listening to a superintendent and another Valerie. I enjoyed that. Again, it was more for you guys, but it was interesting to see all the communication that goes back and forth. So there's a ton of information that you guys have to go through to figure out what to put out and how to get it out the most efficiently. Again, I was working on efficiency because my life right now is not efficient enough. Saturday, the delegate assembly, so they handed out this delegate assembly packet. They had the delegate assembly report. They give you a little clicker. You guys probably already seen how the votes were. It went as expected. Tom has a huge deal with that. He has had a huge deal with that. We got to elect a president and vice president coming up for the delegate. He can speak on that if he wants to. This thing is a lot of back and forth. There's opinions galore. Thank goodness the ISB narrowed it down from when I first started, 20 of these down to I think 5 this year, and then those 5 still took way longer than what I expected, but everybody has an opinion. What's really nice in there is the opinions were at least nicely stated from each person or each school district. So if you guys want to see that, know about that, I'll give you a whole lot more information. It is interesting. Now it goes to get voted on. So there's that. The next thing was effective meetings. I didn't make that because I was in the delegate, and then this goes back to the ISB. I was able to download several different documents, which are PowerPoints that I can go through later and read. And then ChatGPT was the most interesting of everything that I've seen. There was a gentleman in there that was from IT that got on ChatGPT and showed us exactly how it works. You can pretty much pull anything that you want. And I read about it, I've seen it, I just haven't actually used it. Now I downloaded it and I'm ready to try to use it. So, again, it's all about efficiency, not about trying to cheat the system.
So in our next meeting, that reminds me that we're gonna have some of our, Don Sturm and Paul Gettleman and Deidre Ripka are gonna do a presentation on AI, the good, bad, and ugly. I really don't even know what exactly it's all gonna be about, but I know we've asked them to kind of get us up to speed on some of the concerns and some of the benefits. So we can look forward to that at our next board meeting.
I am so looking forward to that, because there was, I'm assuming they were teachers that were asking the IT gentleman that was in charge of it, hey, do this, do this, do this, and they were like writing letters, and then he would change it from like one type of author, which would be English, to another type of author, which would be like, I don't know, in the early 14th century, and then to another type of author, which would be like, oh shoot, do you remember all those authors, Valerie? It was crazy. It was just neat on how it changed.
Yeah, they pulled up like do it in Dickens style, do it in Shakespeare style.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So it's interesting on what it can do, and then there is the bad and the ugly part. He showed the good part.
Okay.
Well, I'll share a few highlights of some of the sessions I went to. The first one, the session I wanted to go to was full, and so this was the default session that was open that I could get into, and it's geared towards administrative assistants. But they had this speaker on there who was administrative assistant to some Fortune 500 executive person, and there's a lot of good takeaways from what she had to offer. One of the takeaways I wrote down that I thought, man, this is good and took notes of was life offers us opportunities that we can either ignore or take a chance on to see where they lead us. And another thing that she brought up is to never let fear to decide your future. And I thought, man, those two were good right there just in general. But even as a board, if you have uncertain times, they're just good reminders. And then the last one that I wrote down that I thought was good is, if you see the light at the end of the tunnel, it's just an oncoming train. Which I thought was good, because just when you think you're at the end of something, you're going to get hit with something else. And I think that's how life is. So that one was good. And then the other session I want to talk about was the one that Tim went to as well. It was what your superintendent wants to tell you but can't. And basically the biggest takeaway on that was just how much stress the superintendent is under and how underappreciated they feel. And so, Dr. Smock, I just want you to know that I thank you for the job you're doing, and I appreciate what you do for us.
It's a pleasure.
Troy and I went to a very, I'm not sure how I would define it, the unfunded mandates. We probably could have spent our time in a better fashion, because it's a lot of what we know. There's too many of them. They send you the mandates. They say, well, this may not even cost you money, but if it takes staff to fill out reports, those are still costly to districts. So there was like 699 mandates, most all of those impacting public education. And we just have to stay on top of that as a school board and a school board association. Saturday was kind of the end of the ride for me on the only school board association, but it was a good one. I think I'd been serving as an officer for like 10 years. Sunday I received a little plaque, and they gave me a book, or one of the gentlemen gave me a book. He gave me 2 books. And the first was Make Your Bed. And I thought, wow. But McRaven wrote it, and he's an admiral, and he said, if you make your bed first thing in the morning, you've had some success, and it's a good way to start your day. I got through that one in a hurry. Then they also gave me My Home Team, which was about our Morton girls basketball team. I have not finished it yet. But the one I found very interesting was the generational presentation. And I bought the book on that, and it's going to take me a while to get through it. But there was a lot to that when we think about our generations, that how we have to educate our students, not have to, how we have the opportunity to educate our students, but the things that change over time. And one of the things that was highlighted in his presentation is what kids are coming to school with as a result of COVID, and beyond COVID, all the technology. And down the road as an agenda item, I'd almost like to see a task force to look to see, are there things that we can do to turn that around for our district? I know that's easy to say, not easy to do, but I'd feel great if we could be a pathfinder in that, at least put it back a little bit, because what we heard tonight is in some of our presentations was how that's impacting teachers trying to teach children and that have so much experience with technology, and it's still such a distraction for them. So it was something that I think it would be great if we could look at that. I know the SEL team, they're looking at it, but maybe coming to us with some ideas that you're thinking about, or ways that we can even better educate parents on things that we can do collectively. I know we talked about that previously, but I think it's a big deal, as we all know. And that was a big issue in his presentation. But he walked us all the way from World War I to where we are today, and how your community is impacted. I mean, we're living with 6 generations of people right now, and it's just mind-boggling when you think about a community and the values and the norms in that community. And I'm spending too much time talking, but it was a good conference for me. On Sunday, I wrapped it up on legal issues, things you can't believe that people would bring up, was kind of the title of it. And indeed, we've been faced with some of those in our own district, some of the challenges that school districts are faced with, the issue of the prayer and the things that we've heard about. And yes, I feel that we've done a good job in dealing with most of these issues. So thank you for indulging me.
Thanks for your representation on the association for all those years. Much appreciated. So you represented as well. If people are high expectations, if we beat somebody, they say, "Oh, you're Morton, you must be as good as Tom." No, we're not. And the comments about the generations was brought up at several tables tonight. We were on the same tables, and teachers were discussing how kids are coming to school with just more issues and difficult issues than they have been in the past. So, then a spoiler alert on your book, the girls won state 3 years in a row.
I know that. I knew how it ended. But he was comparing his sports writing life also. So, did you read that part?
I read it last night. So
you're right.
I was all excited. I had to have sat with a librarian. I got to brag. I read a book. So life is good.
So for me, I think the 2 that I took a fair bit from. So one was the same. I sat on the intro to collective bargaining with Tim, being that I apparently was nominated to serve in that capacity as representative for the board last meeting when I wasn't here. Thought maybe I should sit in on that. Get some details on that. I thought it was actually really well done. You know, lawyer and the superintendent kind of went back and forth through the whole thing, and I took a lot of notes, which I will not bore you with, but I think it will be super helpful. A lot of it is pretty low-hanging fruit, right? Simple stuff. You just got to remember, you know, what you're all there for, like you said. And then the other one I went to that I found pretty helpful was understanding the impacts of inflation on your district, right? I mean, inflation is something that everybody's dealt with. It was actually brought up to me at Grundy today. You know, inflation's rough. You know, how about a raise in the spring? I'm like, oh, here we go. And but it was actually super helpful because they talked about long term and where they think it's going. And I had a lot of notes on that too. That I need to sit down. Did you go to it at a different one? Did you? Yes. Did you find it useful?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
they're saying, well, I wonder what we're doing with that. So I had some things, then our next time we have a financial committee meeting, I'm gonna vendor year, like, well, what are we doing for that? Cause it's pretty interesting, I thought.
Okay. All right. Well, the two I was gonna talk on of the several that I went to have been talked about pretty well, but the art of school boarding, I went to it last year and I would highly recommend. I liked it so much I went back this year. I feel like the guy that speaks at it is just super knowledgeable. He was the past superintendent and he serves now like on a hospital board, so he's kind of seen both sides of how both of them operate. One thing he said is being a superintendent, which I thought was good and it was a good reminder, is he said, tell me what you're thinking, but don't tell me how to do it. Coming from a superintendent. So we hire you and we entrust and we, are confident in that decision and appreciate what you do. So, thank you for that. Another one was just that we help write policy, but the administration obviously implements procedures. So we're thankful for that part too. But generational studies, I went to that as well. I didn't see you in there, but it was such a big room that I can see why I didn't see you there. But they, I thought it was interesting that there are six living generations, like you said, living here in 2023, and that just from childhood through 18, that's your formative years, and then you become a generation. Just a lot of different people who have grown up and have different values and different things that have shaped the way they are, and we're kind of dealing with all of that within a school district when you think of grandparents down to new parents. So a couple other ones I hit I won't touch on, but they were good too.
Okay, a couple of comments for Mr. Neely. First, thank you. I thank you for your service on the board. Not only do you represent Morton 709, you represent Central Illinois, which doesn't get a lot of representation on the III boards, okay? And so that is commendable, and you've done it for so long, so thank you. And then the second thing, thank you for bringing up Admiral McRaven, the 10 ways to change the world. I kicked off a home station training about 6 years ago with my unit in the Air Guard, and that's the video I showed, and now I gotta go back and watch it because it really is. You can change the world when you do these things, okay? So thank you for doing that.
I saw his video, so I will.
So I did negotiations, one word, relationships. I think we've got great relationships here in 709. It was very well done presentation. You always have certain takeaways. The second session I went to was a group from a school district, we'll just say in the suburban Chicago area. Listen to two of their tech team guys talk about everything Google. And so if any of you would like, so I went up to them afterward and I said, hey, so all these videos, I think they've got like 130, like on average 2-minute videos. Now, about half of the videos are specific to their school district, like, Chromebook turn-in. But a lot of them are on like Google Keep and organizing your email and all that. So if anyone out there wants that link to that website, just shoot me an email. I'll copy the link and I'll send it to you because I have used it so many times. Like, for example, Google Slides, presentations. I didn't realize you could use that to make posters, that you can change the orientation of slides. Now, I brought it up to our Can-Do Tech crew here, and they said, oh, yeah, we've been doing that for a long time. But the quick 2-minute video is worth the watch, okay? And the last thing, there was a school district outside of Rockford. They had 79 slides, and it was on manufacturing and careers in manufacturing. 79 slides that they accomplished in about 50 minutes. But it was fantastic. They called, there was one big takeaway, a regional immersion night. And it was multiple high schools got together and they brought in different manufacturing entities. So it was almost like just like a huge area that had booths with all the different trades. And so it was truly an immersion night in manufacturing. I'm gonna reach out to Jill Warren, who's our EFE director, to see if anything like that could be done here regionally, but they said that they had over 300 students attend from multiple high schools. And so that was a huge takeaway.
All right, the two I'm just going to quickly talk about, really talked a lot about the current state of affairs that isn't so good. And there wasn't a whole lot of solutions, unfortunately. I was hoping to hear more about solutions. The first one, attracting, supporting, and retaining effective principals. That was done by Jason Leahy of the IPA, so he's the executive director of IPA. And just a few notes about that. Only 1 in 4 principals remain in their positions for 5 years. And even in our district, we've seen administrators leave entirely the area of education and go into the commercial world, and that's in Morton. So for some reason, people just don't want to do these jobs anymore. And they're really having a hard time even getting teachers to be interested in taking the education courses to become principals. So this is a serious problem. So he mentioned 1 in 4 principals stay for 5 years, but it takes 5 to 10 years to actually build a building culture. So cultures aren't getting built. There's this, it's a turnstile of turnover, and that's a difficulty. The average hours a week a principal spends, and this is back in 2018, this is pre-pandemic, was 61 hours. And that's probably hours at the job and not at home. And that's the other aspect, was the stress levels, the SEL and mental health issues that they deal with students, with staff, with themselves. The advent of the cell phone was just a great tool that follows you everywhere with email. And you think back, like, what was the principal's job like prior to email and cell phones? I mean, they walked out the door, and maybe they got a phone call at home now and then, but probably pretty rare. So it's just a completely different life and stress that accompanies it. What are the solutions? So it's more like expressing the problem. One of the things they did talk about is, we know that administrators make more in salary than teachers, but one of the suggestions was, but look at the per day pay. So how does their pay really compare when you look at it per diem compared to teachers? And I know we've had that issue in our own district when we've moved a teacher to an administrative job. You think, oh, now they're making the big bucks. No, not necessarily. So that was maybe their only suggestion is that. But we have lost administrators, and and you're hearing the outcry from universities right now. We need teachers into these programs. We can't get them in, and it's just tough finding people that are willing to step up to do those jobs. And I think it's not surprising. So sorry, that was kind of a downer, wasn't it? The other was K-12 economics and policy in Springfield. So that was Brent Clark of the IESA, another big hitter in our state. And there were 2 state representatives. The deputy governor was there, and basically touting EBF funding, which is evidence-based funding, how schools are funded through state funds now compared to what they used to be, and basically saying it's a success. I agree with that. I think schools are pretty well funded now more than ever. They did mention, however, the categoricals, which are the kind of the sideline issues, you could say. Transportation and special ed are 2 big ones. They're not as well funded, and so that's one of our concerns. They indicated immigration in our state is having a big impact on the state budget, and I didn't know that. That was kind of a surprise to me. I know Chicago's dealing with that issue. I've seen that in the news, but I didn't know what kind of impact it was having at this point. And the one that wasn't so much of a surprise is pensions. And some of you may know this, that some of our faculty are in what's called Tier 2. Tier 1 are employees that were hired before January of 2011, and those hired after January of 2011 are in a completely different pension situation. Same system, same contributions. They work till they're age 67. Tier 1 people work to age 55 to get to full retirement. So that's just scratching the surface on the differences. That's not going into all the details of other big differences. So one of the concerns is that since teachers don't pay into Social Security, there is a law that their benefits have to be as good as Social Security to be not in Social Security. Well, there's some concern about whether 2-tier folks, now that they're starting to get to retirement age, are really in this safe harbor of having benefits better than Social Security would have been for them. So this was predictable. I think Joe and I have talked about this even before Joe worked in our district. We had conversations in IASBO about this is a lawsuit. It's just a matter of time. In a few more years, people are going to start waking up to this. And they did talk about that. So we'll see where that goes. I think there's some language right now to try to change Tier 2 a little bit for those younger teachers. But some of those teachers aren't as young as we used to think they were. So 2011 was a while back now. So, and the last thing I'd leave you with is they just talked a little bit about the state $900 million budget deficit that they deal with. And, I don't know that they have any solutions to that. So again, a lot of, I guess you could say, problems without a whole lot of solutions. But yeah, I still found it educational. It was great to hear from those big hitters in those organizations. Those are the two, big organizations in our state. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to our school board who went down there spent 2 or 3, 4 days apart from their families, apart from their jobs, to do a volunteer job. I mean, it's truly a thankless job at times, and I just really appreciate the dedication that you all have to take time out of your lives to go do that and to educate yourselves about things relative to Illinois education and the issues and solutions. I just appreciate the fact that we had you all up there, and it was a good time to get to know one another also. A lot of good education as well, so appreciate your dedication to that. Not every school board has their full team up there, so really appreciated that. That's all I have.
I don't know, they tried to tell me it was in December, so I don't know what they were trying to get me to go a month later.
Really?
Appreciate that. And no, it was a good time to spend some time with each other, just on a social level a little bit. Got to eat dinner one night or 2 nights together, and just to just a personal, not really school board business, and so that was good. So with that, we'll move on to action items. We have 2 of them. First, we'll accept a motion for the Board of Education to approve the property tax relief grant.
The Board of Education approved the submission of the application for the property relief grant.
Support.
Any discussion?
Mr. Rudd?
Yes.
Dr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Neely?
Yes.
Mr. Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Breaker?
Yes.
Dr. Crawl?
Yes.
And Mrs. Lehman?
Yes.
The second item is the motion to approve the base bid plus alternate bids 1 and 2 from Midwest Service Group in the amount of $131,679 for asbestos abatement at the high school.
And I would just say, this helps us get a head start on the renovation project. We'll start probably in March. We're getting the asbestos abated out of the tunnels. We'll let them hit the ground running when they actually start the demolition and renovation process in that part of the building. So I think this is a great idea to get this good thing going and have that done before the rest of the renovation. So we're gonna try to accomplish this, we are gonna accomplish this over Christmas vacation when students aren't in the building.
So moved. Tim? You wanted a motion?
I got a motion. So moved. Here's
Support.
Second. Not falling asleep yet.
Mr. Neely?
Yes.
Dr. Cross?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamon?
Yes.
Mr. Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Rudd? Mr. Breaker?
Yes.
And Dr. Crawl?
Yes.
He already read it.
Next, we'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
I gotta look at you, otherwise I get in trouble. Thank you, Dr. Cross.
Support.
Support, Mr. Rudd? Dr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Rudd?
Yes.
Dr. Crawl?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamon?
Yes.
Mr. Neely?
Yes.
Mr. Roth?
Yes.
And Mr. Breaker?
Yes. I guess Troy wanted his tie mentioned before we go into closed session or something, so I don't. Anyway, we'll accept a motion to enter into closed session to discuss personnel.
So moved.
Support. Oh, go ahead. No, you got it.
And let's do Dr. Cross,
Yes.
Dr. Crawl,
Yes.
Mr. Breaker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Neely,
Yes.
Mr. Roth,
Yes.
and Mr. Red.
Yes.
That will take 5 minutes to tear down.